The alien ship moved through space like a giant silver whale. Its name was Serenity's Edge, and it carried the most important mission in galactic history. Inside the ship, Ambassador Zixthara looked at the blue planet ahead with great interest. Earth looked so peaceful and beautiful from space. Zixthara had studied humans for many years. She had watched their television shows, listened to their music, and read their books. Everything she learned told her that humans were a gentle species who loved art and beauty. They made movies about love and friendship. They wrote songs about peace and hope. They painted pictures of flowers and sunsets. Perfect, Zixthara thought to herself. These humans will make excellent trading partners. They seemed so calm and friendly. Her assistant, a young alien named Kexmora, brought her a datapad. Ambassador, we are ready to make contact. The human ship is waiting for us. Zixthara looked at the human vessel on her screen. It was called the UES Defender, and it looked strong but not threatening. The humans had agreed to meet them at a neutral space station called Haven's Rest. This station floated between Earth and Mars. Built just for this historic meeting, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defender. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had been chosen carefully for this job. The Earth government wanted someone who could stay cool under pressure. Jake had served in the Space Navy for 20 years. He knew how to handle difficult situations. Sir, the alien ship is getting closer, said his second officer, Lieutenant Amy Brooks. She was young and smart, with brown hair tied back in a neat style. Amy had studied alien languages and would help with communication. Jake nodded. Remember, everyone, this is the most important day in human history. We need to make a good impression. But stay alert. We don't know what these aliens really want. The crew of the Defender all understood. They looked relaxed and friendly, but their eyes were always moving. They checked their equipment without thinking about it. They stood in positions where they could move quickly if needed. This was just normal for humans, but they didn't know how strange it looked to others. On the space station Haven's Rest, negotiator Lisa Carter waited in the main meeting room. She was a skilled diplomat with blonde hair and a warm smile. Lisa had prepared for this moment her whole life. She knew how to talk to people and make them feel comfortable. But like all humans, she also noticed things that others might miss. The meeting room was large and bright. Lisa had already walked around it 3 times. She knew where all the doors were. She had counted the windows and checked the air vents. She had tested the furniture to see how heavy it was. To Lisa, this was just being careful. She didn't know that most aliens would never think to do such things. The alien delegation arrived first. Zixthara entered the room with 5 other aliens. They were tall and thin, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their eyes were large and dark. They moved in a flowing way that seemed almost like dancing. "Welcome," Lisa said with a bright smile. She bowed slightly in the way that her cultural training had taught her was polite to these aliens. Zixthara was pleased. The human woman seemed so respectful and gentle. "Thank you, Lisa Carter. We are honored to meet your species." When Captain Jake Morrison and his team arrived, Zixthara watched them carefully. The humans all smiled and seemed friendly, but something felt different about them. They moved with purpose. Their eyes seemed to see everything. Even when they were standing still, they looked ready to move. Strange, thought Zixthara. They seem nervous. Maybe they are just excited about meeting us. Jake shook hands with each alien. This was a human custom that the aliens had learned about. "Welcome to our solar system," Jake said. "We hope this is the beginning of a long friendship." The aliens were happy with this greeting. They sat down at a large round table. Lisa had chosen this table because it made everyone equal. No one sat. At the head of the table, as they talked, Zixthara noticed more odd things about the humans. Lisa always sat where she could see the whole room. Jake kept one hand free at all times, never putting both hands on the table. Amy Brooks seemed to listen to sounds that weren't there, turning her head slightly when the air system made noise. "Tell us about your people," Zixthara said. "We have seen your movies and music. You seem to love beauty and peace." Lisa smiled. "We do love those things. Humans enjoy art and music very much. We like to create things that make life better." This made the aliens very happy. Zixthara thought about all the human art she had studied. Paintings of peaceful landscapes, songs about love and friendship, stories about people helping each other. Yes, these humans were clearly a gentle species. But if the aliens had looked more carefully, they might have noticed other things. They might have seen that even human children's games involved strategy and competition. They might have realized that human sports were often about overcoming opponents. They might have understood that human stories were usually about someone fighting against problems or enemies. Jake Morrison watched the aliens as they talked. He had been trained to read body language and facial expressions. These aliens seemed honest and friendly. But Jake stayed alert anyway. It was his job to protect humanity, and he took that job seriously. The meeting lasted for 3 hours. They talked about trade, science, and culture. The aliens shared information about other species in the galaxy. The humans told them about Earth's history and achievements. When the meeting ended, both sides felt good about it. The aliens thought they had found a peaceful species that would be easy to work with. The humans thought they had made contact with friendly aliens who might become good partners. As the alien ship prepared to leave, Zixthara felt very satisfied. "These humans will be perfect," she told her assistant. "They are so calm and gentle. I think we can get very good trade deals from them." Kex Mora agreed. "Yes, Ambassador. They seem to have no military training at all. Did you see how they just sat there talking? Most species would have shown some sign of strength or aggression. These humans are very trusting." Neither alien understood that what they saw as weakness was actually incredible self-control. They didn't realize that every human in that room had been ready for anything. Jake Morrison could have drawn his sidearm in less than 2 seconds. Lisa Carter had memorized 17 different escape routes. Amy Brooks had been monitoring alien body language for signs of deception the entire time. The humans went back to Earth feeling hopeful but cautious. They had made contact with aliens, and it had gone well. But they would stay prepared for anything. That was just the human way. In space, the alien ship began its journey home. Zixthara was already planning her next visit. She had no idea that she had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 3 months had passed since the first meeting between humans and aliens. Ambassador Zixthara felt very confident about her next visit to Earth. She had convinced the Etherian collective that humans would be perfect trading partners. Easy to deal with, friendly, and most importantly, weak enough to give them good deals. This time, Zixthara brought a much larger group. Trade Overseer Kethmoran led a fleet of merchant ships. He was a clever alien who had made many profitable deals with other species across the galaxy. Kethmoran believed that success came from showing strength and taking advantage of weaker peoples. "These humans sound perfect," Kethmoran told Zixthara as their ships approached Earth. "From your reports, they seem like children, so trusting and innocent. We will make excellent profits from them." Alongside the merchants came Vex Taylor, a security officer from the Etherian military. Vex Taylor was tall even for his species, with dark stripes across his blue skin that showed his rank. He carried advanced weapons and had fought in several galactic conflicts. His job was to make sure the trade talks went smoothly, using fear if necessary. Captain Jake Morrison met them again at Haven's rest station. This time he brought a larger team of humans. Engineer Sam Rodriguez was a short, stocky man with calloused hands and sharp eyes. He knew more about machines and technology than almost anyone on Earth. Cultural liaison Amy Brooks returned, along with several other specialists. The humans had spent 3 months preparing for this meeting. They had studied everything they could learn about Etherian technology and culture. They had practiced different negotiation strategies. Most importantly, they had prepared for things to go wrong. The first day of talks went well. The aliens showed the humans many wonderful technologies. Anti-gravity generators that could lift enormous weights. Energy shields that could stop any weapon. Medical devices that could heal injuries in minutes. The humans looked at everything with great interest, but the aliens noticed something strange. The humans asked many questions about safety. They wanted to know how the devices worked. They asked about emergency shut-off procedures. They insisted on testing everything themselves before agreeing to any trades. Why do they ask so many questions? Cathmoran whispered to Zixthara. Most species just want to know the price. Sam. Rodriguez carefully examined an alien power generator. He took detailed notes and asked the alien technicians to explain every part. What happens if this overheats? Sam asked. How do you shut it down quickly? What kind of radiation does it give off? The alien technician, named Kelvanos, seemed annoyed by all the questions. It is perfectly safe, he said. We have used these for hundreds of years. Why do you worry so much? Sam smiled politely. We just like to be careful. Humans have learned that it's better to understand everything before we use it. What Sam didn't say was that he was also figuring out how the device could be used as a weapon. He noticed that the power output could be changed quickly. He saw that the cooling system had weak points. He realized that the control circuits could probably be overloaded. This wasn't because Sam was planning to fight anyone. It was just how human minds worked. They automatically saw both the good and bad uses for everything. Amy Brooks talked with the alien cultural experts about art and music. She seemed very interested in their paintings and songs. But she also asked about their history, their government, and their military. The aliens thought she was just curious. They didn't realize she was building a complete picture of their society, including their weaknesses. On the second day, things began to change. Cathmoran decided that the humans were taking too long to make decisions. He wanted to speed up the process by showing them that the aliens were not to be taken lightly. Perhaps we should demonstrate the full capabilities of our technology, Cathmoran suggested to Vex Taylor. These humans seem too comfortable. They need to understand that we are the advanced species here. Vex Taylor agreed. He had been watching the humans and didn't like what he saw. They were too calm, too confident. In his experience, weaker species should show more fear and respect when dealing with superior aliens. The demonstration took place in the main conference room. Vex Taylor brought several other alien security officers with him. They carried impressive weapons that glowed with energy. The weapons looked like nothing humans had ever seen before. We thought you might like to see some of our defensive technology, Vex Taylor announced to the human delegation. His voice was loud and commanding. These weapons can destroy your largest ships with a single shot. The aliens expected the humans to be amazed and frightened. They expected them to back away or ask for mercy. Instead, something completely different happened. Every human in the room reacted at exactly the same moment. Without anyone giving orders or making signals, they all moved into defensive positions. Jake Morrison stepped slightly in front of Amy Brooks. Sam Rodriguez moved behind a support pillar that would provide cover. Two human security officers who had been standing by the walls suddenly had clear lines of sight to all the aliens. Change happened in less than 3 seconds. One moment the humans had been sitting casually around a table. The next moment they were positioned like a trained military unit ready for combat. But the most surprising thing was that they didn't look scared or panicked. They looked calm and focused. Their eyes tracked every alien movement. Their bodies were relaxed but ready to move instantly. They had transformed from peaceful negotiators into something much more dangerous. Vex Taylor felt a chill run through his body. He had seen this kind of reaction before, but only from professional soldiers with years of training. These humans were supposed to be civilians. The engineer, the cultural expert, even the diplomats had all responded like experienced warriors. "Interesting demonstration," Jake Morrison said in a steady voice. He hadn't moved back to his seat. His hand rested casually near his sidearm, though he hadn't drawn it. "Is this how your people usually conduct trade negotiations?" The question was polite, but there was something in Jake's tone that made all the aliens nervous. It wasn't fear or anger. It was the sound of someone who was completely ready for whatever might happen next. Kath Morin quickly stepped forward. "Please excuse us," he said with a nervous laugh. "Vex Taylor was just showing off. We meant no threat." But the damage was done. The aliens had revealed their true intentions, and the humans had revealed something too. They had shown that underneath their friendly, peaceful appearance lay something much more formidable. As the humans slowly returned to their seats, Zixthara felt her confidence begin to crack. These humans were not what they seemed. The way they had moved, the way they had positioned themselves, the way they had stayed so calm under threat. It reminded her of the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The rest of the day passed quietly. Both sides were polite and professional, but the atmosphere had changed. The aliens were no longer sure they understood humans at all. The humans continued to ask their careful questions and make their detailed plans, but now the aliens wondered what else they might be planning. That night, as the alien ships prepared to leave, Vex Taylor made his report. "These humans are not what we thought," he told his commanders. "They respond to threats like trained soldiers, all of them. Even their civilians." Kath Morin was troubled too. "They ask too many questions. They want to know too much about our technology." "And did you see how quickly they moved?" It was like they had practiced that response 1,000 times. Zixthara tried to remain optimistic. "Perhaps we misunderstood. Maybe they were just startled. Humans are still a peaceful species. Look at their art, their music, their culture." But deep inside, she was beginning to have doubts. The humans had shown her something today that didn't match anything she had learned about them. They had shown her that they were ready for war, even when they claimed to want peace. The alien fleet left Earth orbit, but this time they were not nearly as confident about their next meeting. They had learned something important about humans, but they didn't yet understand what it meant. On Earth, the human negotiation team held their own meeting. "They're testing us," Jake Morrison said. "That wasn't a demonstration. That was a threat." Sam Rodriguez nodded. "Their technology is impressive, but it's not magic. Everything has weaknesses. Everything can be countered." Amy Brooks added her own observations. "Their culture values strength over cooperation. They see negotiation as a form of combat. We need to be ready for them to try something more serious next time." The humans began preparing for the possibility that their new alien friends might not be friends at all. But they did this quietly, carefully, without stopping their efforts to build a peaceful relationship. Because that's what humans did. They hoped for the best, but they prepared for the worst. The aliens had no idea that they had just triggered a most basic human survival instinct. They had shown themselves to be a potential threat. Now every human on Earth would be watching them, studying them, and getting ready for whatever came next. Military advisor Quinthex stared at the reports from the second human meeting. He was one of the most experienced officers in the Etherian fleet, with dark purple markings that showed his high rank. For 30 years, he had studied different species across the galaxy. He knew how to read their strengths and weaknesses. "This doesn't make sense," Quintex said to Ambassador Zixthara. They were meeting in his private office aboard the command ship. "You say these humans are peaceful, but look at this behavior. Instant tactical response. Perfect positioning. No panic or confusion." Zixthara felt uncomfortable. Maybe we surprised them. Any species might react that way when threatened. Quintex shook his head. "No, I've seen thousands of species react to sudden threats. Most freeze up or run away. Some fight back, but they're clumsy and scared. These humans moved like they had trained for that exact situation their whole lives." The military advisor made a decision. "We need to test them properly. I want to see how they handle a real crisis, not just a weapons demonstration." 3 weeks later, the aliens sent another message to Earth. This time they invited a small group of humans to visit their ship for a cultural exchange. They said they wanted to learn more about human daily life and customs that the human government chose carefully. They didn't send soldiers or diplomats this time. Instead, they picked ordinary citizens who could show what regular human life was like. Ben Clark was a teacher from Ohio who worked with children. Kate Williams was a nurse from Texas who helped sick people. Tony Green was a mechanic from California who fixed cars and machines. Ben Clark was excited about the trip. He was a thin man with brown hair and glasses who loved learning about new things. He had taught school for 15 years and was always curious about different cultures. Ben had volunteered because he wanted his students to hear real stories about meeting aliens. Kate Williams was more cautious. She was a sturdy woman with red hair who had worked in hospitals for 12 years. Kate had seen many emergencies and knew how quickly things could go wrong. She packed a medical kit even though the aliens said they had excellent health care. Tony Green looked forward to seeing alien machines. He was a big man with strong hands who could fix almost anything. Tony had grown up taking apart engines and putting them back together. He wanted to understand how alien technology worked. The 3 humans traveled to the alien ship in a small shuttle. The ship was called the Wisdom Seeker, and it was huge compared to any human vessel. The aliens welcomed them warmly and gave them a tour of the ship. Quintex watched the humans carefully through hidden cameras. He had planned everything perfectly. The ship had fake emergency systems that he could trigger at any time. He would create a crisis and see how these peaceful humans reacted when they thought they were in real danger. The humans seemed very impressed by the alien ship. Ben asked many questions about how the aliens educated their children. Kate wanted to know about alien medicine and how they treated diseases. Tony was fascinated by the engine room and asked to see how everything worked. But Quintex noticed things that worried him. Ben Clark positioned himself so he could always see the exits from any room. When they walked through corridors, he naturally took the position that would let him protect the others if something happened. Kate Williams asked detailed questions about the ship's safety systems and emergency procedures. Tony Green studied the alien machines not just with curiosity, but with the eye of someone figuring out how they could be repaired or disabled. "These are supposed to be civilians," Quintex muttered to his assistant, "but they act like scouts, gathering intelligence." On the second day of the visit, Quintex decided to spring his test. The humans were eating lunch in the ship's dining hall when alarms suddenly started blaring. Red lights flashed everywhere. An automated voice announced in perfect English, "Engine failure detected. Radiation leak in progress. All personnel prepare." For emergency procedures, Quintex expected to see panic. He thought the humans would scream, run around helplessly, or beg the aliens to save them. Instead, he witnessed something that made his blood run cold. The 3 humans instantly transformed. Ben Clark immediately took charge, his voice calm and commanding. Kate, check for anyone who might be injured by radiation. Tony, we need to find the source of the leak and see if it can be contained. Kate Williams was already moving, pulling medical supplies from her bag. Ben, get everyone away from the engine section. I'll set up a triage area. She started checking the alien crew members for signs of radiation exposure, even though she had never seen their species before. Tony Green was running toward the engine room, not away from it. I need to see the damage, he called back. Maybe. I can help fix it. The aliens in the dining hall were confused and frightened by the alarms, but the humans organized them quickly and efficiently. Ben directed the evacuation like he had done it hundreds of times before. Kate set up a medical station and began treating aliens for shock and minor injuries. Tony disappeared into the engine room with 2 alien technicians, somehow managing to communicate about complex machinery despite not speaking their language. Quinfex watched in amazement. These weren't trained emergency responders. Ben was a school teacher. Kate was a hospital nurse. Tony was a car mechanic. Yet they were handling this crisis better than many trained military units he had seen. Sir, his assistant whispered, should we tell them it's just a test? Not yet, Quinfex replied. He was learning too much to stop now. In the end room. Tony Green was studying the alien systems with incredible speed. Even though the technology was completely foreign to him, he was figuring out how it worked. He pointed to different components and asked questions that showed he understood the basic principles. This coupling is loose, Tony told the alien engineer through gestures and simple words. And this coolant line is blocked. Not radiation leak, just overheating. The alien engineer stared at Tony in shock. It had taken him years of training to understand these systems. How could this human figure them out in minutes? Meanwhile, Ben Clark had organized the evacuation so well that everyone was safely away from the supposed danger zone. He had assigned tasks to different aliens, created clear escape routes, and established a communication system. He did all this while staying perfectly calm and making everyone else feel safer. Kate Williams had turned the dining hall into a proper medical center. She had treated 3 aliens for panic attacks, bandaged a minor cut, and organized the other aliens to help with simple medical tasks. She worked with confidence and skill, adapting her human medical knowledge to alien biology. After 2 hours, Quinfex finally ended the test. The alarm stopped, and he announced that it had been a training exercise. He expected the humans to be angry about being deceived. Instead, Ben Clark smiled and said, "That was good practice. We learned a lot about your ship systems." Kate Williams nodded. "Your crew handled the stress pretty well, though you might want to add some basic first aid training to their emergency procedures." Tony Green came back from the engine room covered in alien oil, but grinning. "Your engines are amazing. I think I figured out how to make them run more efficiently." That night, Quinfex sent an urgent message to the Etherian High Command. "The humans are not what we thought. Every single one of them possesses advanced crisis management skills. They don't panic. They don't wait for orders. They automatically organize and take action." He paused, trying to find the right words. A school teacher took command like a military officer. A nurse set up field medicine like a combat medic. A mechanic diagnosed our engine problems faster than our own engineers. These aren't random civilians. They're all potential military assets. The response came back quickly. "Explain." Quinfex thought carefully before answering. "I think every human is trained for emergencies from childhood. Not formally trained, but shaped by their culture and evolution. They don't have specialists who handle crises. They're all specialists." Back on Earth, the 3 humans returned to their normal lives. Ben went back to teaching children. Kate returned to her hospital work. Tony kept fixing cars in his garage. They told people about their interesting trip to meet aliens, but they didn't think they had done anything special. None of them realized that they had just terrified one of the most experienced military analysts in the galaxy. They had shown him that humans didn't just have soldiers and civilians. They had shown him that every human was potentially both. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake, but they still didn't know just how terrible it was. Quinthex spent the next week studying everything he could find about human culture. He watched their movies about disasters and noticed how the heroes always knew what to do. He read their books about survival and saw that they were written for ordinary people, not just experts. He studied their children's games and realized that they were all about problem solving and working together under pressure. They're all warriors, he finally told Zixthara. They just don't think of themselves that way. The ambassador didn't want to believe it, but they're so gentle. They make beautiful art and music. Yes, Quinthex agreed. And that makes them even more dangerous. They're warriors who have learned to love peace. Scientific observer Nimvera had always been curious about how different species evolved. She spent her days studying the history and development of various life forms across the galaxy. Her job was to understand why some species became intelligent, while others did not. She had blue-green skin with silver spots that marked her as a researcher, and large eyes that never seemed to stop observing. After hearing Quinthex's disturbing report about the human civilians, Nimvera decided to study human evolution more carefully. She had looked at human culture before, but now she wanted to understand how they had developed as a species. What she found made her feel sick with worry. Most intelligent species in the galaxy had evolved in safe places. The Etherians had developed on a peaceful world with mild weather and plenty of food. The Zephyrians came from a planet with no large predators. The Crystalline Collective had grown up in underground caves where nothing could threaten them. But humans were completely different. Nimvera read about Earth's history and couldn't believe what she was learning. Humans had survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. They had lived through volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. They had endured plagues that killed half their population. They had faced giant predators, deadly storms, and natural disasters that would have destroyed most species. How did they survive all this? Nimvera wondered aloud. The answer was simple but terrifying. Humans had survived by becoming the most adaptable and dangerous species on their planet. They learned to work together in groups. They developed tools and weapons. They became smart enough to predict danger and strong enough to fight it. Most importantly, they never stopped being ready for the next threat. Nimvera realized that what the aliens saw as human culture was actually a survival manual written in the language of stories and games. She looked at human children's games with new understanding. Tag was practice for chasing and escaping. Hide and seek taught stealth and observation. Sports were combat training disguised as fun. Even their board games were about strategy, resource management, and defeating opponents. Entertainment was the same way. Their movies were full of heroes who fought against impossible odds and won. Their books told stories of people surviving disasters, wars, and alien invasions. Their video games let them practice fighting, building, and surviving in virtual worlds. Their training, Nimvera whispered to herself. All the time, every day, they're training for war and disaster. But they call it fun. She decided to study human history more carefully. What she found was a catalog of horrors that would have ended most civilizations. Humans had fought wars that lasted for decades. They had survived famines that should have killed everyone. They had rebuilt their cities after earthquakes, floods, and fires over and over again. But the most frightening thing was how they talked about these disasters. Humans didn't see them as unusual or terrible. They saw them as normal parts of life. They had sayings like, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," and "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst." They taught their children that bad things would happen and that they needed to be ready. NYM Vera requested a cultural exchange meeting with some human historians. She wanted to understand their past better. The humans agreed and sent a team, led by Alex Stone, a historian from Earth's Global University. Alex Stone was a middle-aged man with gray hair and kind eyes. He loved talking about history and was excited to share human stories with aliens. He brought along several other historians and teachers, all eager to discuss their planet's past. The meeting took place on Haven's Rest Station again. Vera had prepared many questions about human development and culture. She thought it would be a pleasant academic discussion. "Tell me about your species' early history," Vera asked Alex. "How did humans first develop intelligence?" Alex smiled. "Well, it's quite an interesting story. Our ancestors lived in Africa millions of years ago. The climate was changing, and they had to adapt to survive. They came down from the trees and learned to walk upright so they could see predators coming across the grasslands." Vera felt a chill. Most species developed intelligence to solve complex social problems or to find food. Humans had developed it to avoid being eaten. "What about later in your history?" she asked. Alex's eyes lit up. "Oh, there's so much to tell." Humans spread across the entire planet, adapting to every kind of environment. We survived the ice ages by learning to make fire and build shelters. We developed agriculture after a massive volcanic eruption nearly wiped us out. We learned to sail across oceans because our populations kept growing and we needed new places to live. Each story Alex told was worse than the last. Humans had survived disasters that would have been extinction events for most species. But Alex told these stories like they were exciting adventures, not terrible tragedies. "What about your wars?" Vera asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Alex sighed. "Humans have always fought each other, unfortunately. We've had wars over territory, resources, religion, and politics. Some wars lasted for generations. The worst ones killed millions of people and destroyed entire civilizations. But you survived," Vera said quietly. "We always survive," Alex agreed. "That's what humans do. We adapt, we rebuild, we learn from our mistakes, and we keep going. Every disaster makes us stronger and more prepared for the next one." Vera realized that Alex wasn't bragging or trying to sound tough. He was just stating facts that every human child learned in school. To humans, constant struggle and survival were normal. They didn't see themselves as unusually strong or dangerous. They saw themselves as ordinary people doing what anyone would do. Another historian, Mary Johnson, joined the conversation. She was a specialist in military history. "Alex, don't forget to mention how warfare shaped our technology development. Humans have always been very creative when it comes to solving problems, especially when our survival depends on it." Mary began describing how humans had invented better weapons, stronger armor, and more effective strategies throughout their history. She talked about how they had learned to coordinate large armies, supply troops across vast distances, and adapt to any enemy tactics. "We've fought wars in every environment on Earth," Mary explained. "On land, at sea, in the air, underground, in cities, in forests, in deserts, in mountains. Humans can fight anywhere." Vera asked about human peace movements and efforts to stop wars. "Oh yes," Alex said. "Humans work very hard for peace. We've created international laws, peacekeeping organizations, and diplomatic solutions to many conflicts. Most humans prefer peace to war, but they stay ready for war, Nimvera observed. Of course, Mary replied. As the old saying goes, if you want peace, prepare for war. Humans learned long ago that the best way to avoid fighting is to be so prepared for it that your enemies don't want to fight you. The meeting continued for hours. Every story the humans told revealed the same pattern: disaster, adaptation, survival, and preparation for the next disaster. They had turned survival into an art form and passed it down through generations. When the meeting ended, Nimvera felt like she was in a nightmare. These humans seemed so friendly and reasonable. They talked about peace and cooperation. They shared their knowledge freely and showed genuine interest in other species. But underneath their civilized surface was something that made her species look like helpless children. Humans were survivors in the truest sense. They had been shaped by millions of years of constant threats into the perfect survival machines. That night, Nimvera wrote her report to the Etherian leadership. Her hands shook as she typed. Humans are not a peaceful species that has learned to be civilized. They are a war-ready species that has chosen to be peaceful. Every human carries the genetic memory of countless disasters, wars, and survival challenges. Their entire culture is designed to prepare them for threats that most species cannot even imagine. She paused, trying to find the right words to explain what this meant. Humans don't have soldiers and civilians like other species. They have active warriors and reserve warriors. Every human is trained from birth to survive, adapt, and fight if necessary. They just don't call it training. They call it childhood, education, and entertainment. Nimvera's final conclusion was the most frightening of all. If we go to war with humans, we will not be fighting their military. We will be fighting their entire species. Every farmer, teacher, mechanic, and artist is a potential soldier with thousands of years of survival instincts bred into their bones. They are not just ready for war. They are war. The report went straight to the highest levels of Etherian command. For the first time since making contact with humans, the aliens began to feel afraid. On Earth, Alex Stone and Mary Johnson returned to their universities. They felt good about the cultural exchange and hoped it would lead to better understanding between species. They had no idea that their casual discussion of human history had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The aliens were finally beginning to understand what they were really dealing with. But they still had one more terrible lesson to learn. Admiral Dex Vanos was getting tired of all the worried reports about humans. He was the commander of the Etherian Third Fleet and had won battles against 12 different species. His dark blue skin was covered with the scars and markings of a career soldier. In his opinion, all this fear about humans was foolish. They're just another primitive species, Dex Vanos told the Etherian High Council during their emergency meeting. Yes, they seem more organized than we expected, but they have no real weapons. Their technology is hundreds of years behind ours. A show of force will put them in their place. The council chamber was filled with worried aliens. They had read all the reports from Nimvera, Quinthex, and the other observers. The evidence was clear that humans were far more dangerous than they had first appeared. Admiral, said Council Leader Zethmaros, the scientists are very concerned. They believe humans may be more capable than we realized. Dex Vanos laughed. Scientists always worry too much. I've read their reports. So what if humans are good at handling emergencies? So what if they think about survival? When real weapons start firing, all their training won't help them. The Admiral had a plan. There was a small human mining colony on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Only about 300 humans lived there, mining ice and rare minerals. They had no military base, no warships, just civilian equipment and a few security guards. "We'll take the mining colony," Exvanos explained. "A quick, clean operation. We capture the facility, hold it for a few days, and offer to give it back in exchange for better trade terms. The humans will see our superior firepower and agree to our demands." Several council members looked uncomfortable with this plan. "Admiral, what if the humans fight back harder than expected?" "Then we'll defeat them easily," Exvanos replied. "They're miners and farmers, not soldiers. Our weapons can destroy their largest ships. Our shields can stop anything they have. It will be over in hours." The council voted to approve the operation. They trusted their most experienced military commander, even though many of them had private doubts. 2 weeks later, Exvanos led a small fleet toward Europa. He brought 5 warships, enough firepower to destroy the entire moon if necessary. But he didn't plan to destroy anything. This was meant to be a demonstration, not a massacre. The human colony was called New Plymouth. It had been built around several large mining operations that dug deep into Europa's icy surface. The colony included homes for the miners and their families, workshops for maintaining equipment, greenhouses for growing food, and a small spaceport for supply ships. Rick Johnson ran the mining operations. He was a big, strong man who had worked in mines on Earth before coming to Europa. Rick knew every piece of equipment in the colony and every person who lived there. He took his responsibility for their safety very seriously. When the alien ships appeared on the colony's scanners, Rick knew immediately that something was wrong. These weren't the usual alien merchant vessels. These were warships Rick activated. The colony's emergency communication system. "All residents, this is Colony Manager Johnson. We have unknown hostile ships approaching. Implement emergency protocols immediately. This is not a drill." What happened next would have amazed the approaching aliens if they had been watching closely. The peaceful mining colony transformed in less than an hour. Maria Santos was a construction worker who operated the big machines that built new sections of the colony. Within minutes of Rick's announcement, she was converting her equipment into defensive weapons. Construction lasers became anti-ship guns. Earth-moving vehicles became mobile bunkers. Building materials became armor plating. Peter Davis had been an accountant on Earth before moving to Europa for a quieter life. But when the emergency started, all his old military training came back. Peter had served in the Earth Defense Corps for 4 years before becoming an accountant. Now he found himself organizing supply lines and coordinating defensive positions. Like he had never stopped being a soldier, the colony's teenagers surprised everyone with how quickly they adapted. Chris Palmer was only 16, but he had grown, playing strategy games and reading military history. When the adults started building defenses, Chris organized the other young people to help with communications and logistics. Nicole Wright, also 16, took charge of the colony's computer systems. She had always been good with technology, but now she used those skills to hack into the mining equipment and reprogram it for combat. She turned the colony's sensors into early warning systems and the communication network into a military command structure. Even the families with small children found ways to help. Parents organized evacuation shelters deep in the mines where the children would be safe. They set up medical stations and prepared emergency supplies. Everyone had a job, and everyone knew what to do. Admiral Exvanos sent a message to the colony demanding their surrender. "This is Admiral Exvanos of the Etherian Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and no one will be harmed. Resist and face the consequences." Rick Johnson's reply was short and clear. "Admiral, this is Colony Manager Johnson. We decline your generous offer. New Plymouth Colony does not surrender." Exvanos couldn't believe what he was hearing. These humans must be insane. Do they not understand the situation? the admiral ordered his ships to begin the attack. He planned to disable the colony's power systems and force them to give up quickly. But as soon as his ships moved into position, something unexpected happened. The mining colony opened fire. What the Xvanos thought were civilian buildings suddenly revealed hidden weapons. Construction equipment that should have been helpless started shooting at his ships. The humans had turned their entire colony into a fortress in less than 2 hours. The alien weapons were more powerful than anything the humans had. But the humans fought with a coordination and determination that shocked the attacking fleet. They used every advantage they could find. They knew the local terrain perfectly. They had positioned their defenses in places that were hard to attack. Most importantly, they never stopped adapting their tactics. Maria Santos used her construction lasers to target the alien ship's sensors. She couldn't destroy the ships, but she could blind them. Peter Davis coordinated attacks that hit the aliens from multiple directions at once, confusing their defensive systems. The teenagers used the colony's communication network to share information instantly, making the defense more effective than it should have been. The battle lasted 3 days. Admiral Xvanos had expected to capture the colony in 3 hours. Instead, he found himself fighting a grinding siege against an enemy that refused to give up. How are they doing this? Xvanos demanded of his officers. They're civilians. They shouldn't be able to coordinate like this. His tactical officer, Commander Nextaros, looked exhausted. Sir, they're fighting like they've been preparing for this their whole lives. Every move they make is perfectly coordinated. They anticipate our attacks and adapt faster than our computers can calculate new strategies. The worst part was that the humans were winning, not because they had better weapons, but because they fought smarter. They used tactics that the alien military computers couldn't predict. They made weapons out of things that weren't supposed to be weapons. They turned every disadvantage into an advantage. On the 3rd day, Rick Johnson sent another message to the alien fleet. Admiral, you've been shooting at us for 3 days and haven't made much progress. We could keep this up for months if necessary. Or you could leave now, and we'll pretend this never happened. Xvanos realized he had 2 choices. He could escalate the attack and risk destroying his own fleet against these impossible humans. Or he could retreat and admit that a small mining colony had defeated his entire battle group. The admiral chose to retreat. As the alien ships pulled back from Europa, Xvanos tried to understand what had gone wrong. He had brought enough firepower to conquer a planet. The humans had nothing but mining equipment and civilian supplies. Yet somehow they had fought his trained military to a standstill. Send a message to Fleet Command, Xvanos ordered. Recommend immediate reevaluation of human military capabilities. These are not civilians. I don't know what they are, but they're not civilians. On Europa, the colonists began repairing the damage from the battle. Rick Johnson was proud of how everyone had performed, but he wasn't surprised. That's what humans do, he told Maria Santos as they surveyed the damaged but still functioning colony. We adapt, we survive, and we protect our own. Maria nodded. Think they'll be back? Rick looked up at the stars where the alien ships had disappeared. Maybe, but if they do come back, they'll find us even more ready than we were this time. The news of the Europa incident spread quickly through both human and alien space. For humans, it was proof that they could defend themselves against alien threats. For aliens, it was proof that they had made a terrible mistake. About human capabilities, the Etherian fleet had just learned that there was no such thing as human civilians. There were only humans who weren't currently fighting. The emergency session of the Etherian High Council was unlike any meeting in their species' history. Council leader Zethmaros sat at the head of the great circular table, his usually calm face showing deep worry. Around him, the most powerful leaders of the Etherian collective, tried to understand how their simple plan had gone so terribly wrong. Admiral Nexvanos stood before them, his military pride shattered. The great warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds had been defeated by human miners. His report was painful to give, and even more painful to hear. The humans transformed their civilian colony into a military fortress in less than 2 hours. Nexvanos explained to the Silent Council. They used construction equipment as weapons, turned residential buildings into bunkers, and coordinated their defense better than most trained armies. Intelligence Director Mex Valos had been gathering reports from across human space ever since the Europa incident. What she had learned made her sick with fear. Council members, the Europa colony was not unusual. Every human settlement we've observed shows the same pattern. She activated a holographic display showing images from different human colonies. Look at this farming community on Mars. The irrigation systems can be converted to defensive barriers in minutes. The farm equipment doubles as military vehicles. The storage buildings are positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. The display changed to show a human research station. This scientific outpost on Titan appears to be dedicated to studying atmospheric conditions. But notice how the laboratory is built into the mountain for protection. See how the landing pad is positioned so ships can be defended from multiple angles. Every structure has dual purposes. Council member Yexthora spoke up with a shaking voice. Are you saying that every human settlement is secretly a military base? Maxvalos nodded grimly. Not secretly. They don't hide it because they don't. Think of it as military. To humans, this is just normal construction. They build everything to survive attacks because their history has taught them that attacks always come eventually. More reports flooded in as the meeting continued. Human merchant ships carried enough weapons to fight military vessels. Human passenger liners had evacuation procedures that looked like military retreats. Human schools taught children games that were actually combat training. We're not dealing with a species that has a military, Max Malos concluded. We're dealing with a species that is a military. Scientific observer Nim Vera presented her final analysis of human evolution and evolution. Culture. Her voice was quiet, but filled with certainty. Honorable council members, humans are not like any species we have encountered before. Most intelligent life develops in safe environments and learns to fight when necessary. Humans developed intelligence because they had to fight to survive. She showed images of Earth's natural history. Their planet tried to kill them with ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and predators. But instead of dying out, humans became stronger. Every disaster made them more adaptable. Every threat made them more dangerous. The Council. Members looked at images of human cities built to withstand earthquakes, human ships designed to survive storms, human communities organized to help each other through any crisis. Look at their children's games, Imvera continued. They play at hiding, chasing, fighting, and surviving. They call it fun, but it's actually training. Human children learn strategy and tactics before they can raid properly. What about their culture? Asked Council member Dexnara. They make beautiful art and music. They tell stories about peace and love. Nimvera's expression grew even more troubled. That makes them more dangerous, not less. Their art celebrates survival and victory over impossible odds. Their music tells stories of heroes who never give up. Their literature is full of ordinary people who become warriors when they need to. She paused to let this sink in. Humans have turned warfare into an art form, then disguised it as entertainment. They study battle tactics by watching movies. They practice strategy by playing games. They learn about weapons and survival by reading books. And they do all this for pleasure. The most disturbing report came from Trade Overseer Kethmorin. He had been studying human economic systems and had made a terrible discovery. Council members, the human economy is designed for war. They call it industrial capacity, but it's actually a military production system. He showed them data about human manufacturing. Their factories can be converted from making civilian goods to making weapons in a matter of days. Their transportation, and ETWORKs can move armies as easily as they move supplies. Their communication systems can coordinate military operations across entire star systems. But they're not currently at war, protested Council Member Lex Varos. That's what makes them so dangerous, Kethmorin replied. They've built a war economy during peacetime. They're always ready to fight, even when they don't need to fight. As the reports continued, a horrifying picture emerged. Humans didn't just have soldiers and civilians like other species. Every human was potentially both. Their farmers knew how to fight. Their teachers understood tactics. Their doctors could treat battle wounds. Their engineers could build weapons. Their artists could create propaganda. Ambassador Zixthara, who had started this whole contact process, finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. What have we done? The answer came from Captain Jake Morrison himself. The human had requested an emergency meeting with the Etherian leadership. He arrived at Haven's rest station alone, aboard a small diplomatic ship. But even this peaceful gesture felt threatening now that the aliens understood what they were. Dealing with Jake entered the council chamber with his usual calm confidence. He looked around at the terrified alien faces and seemed to understand immediately what had happened. You figured it out, Jake said simply. You finally understand what humans really are. Council leader Zethmaros could barely speak. Captain Morrison, we need to discuss the recent incident at Europa. Jake nodded. Europa colony defended itself when you attacked. That's what any human community would do. We're sorry your admiral got hurt, but he shouldn't have started a fight with civilians. But they weren't really civilians, were they? Zethmaros asked. Jake looked confused. Of course they were civilians. Rick Johnson is a mining foreman. Maria Santos builds things. Peter Davis keeps track of supplies. None of them are soldiers. But they fought like soldiers, Admiral Lexvanos protested. They fought like humans, Jake corrected. When someone threatens our families and homes, we defend them. That's just what we do. The aliens finally understood the terrible truth. Humans didn't see anything unusual about their behavior. To them, being ready for war was as natural as breathing. They didn't think of themselves as warriors. They thought of themselves as normal people who sometimes had to protect what they loved. Captain Morrison, Council Leader Zethmaros said, Carefully, we need to establish new diplomatic protocols. It seems we misunderstood your species' capabilities. Jake smiled. We'd be happy to work out better agreements. Humans prefer peace to war. Fighting is expensive and dangerous, and it stops us from doing more interesting things. But you're always ready to fight, Max Valos observed. Of course, Jake replied. Being ready to fight is the best way to avoid having to fight. Most problems can be solved with talking if both sides know that fighting would be costly. The negotiations that followed were very different from the first meetings. The aliens offered much better trade terms. They agreed to respect all human territorial claims. They promised to share technology and scientific knowledge freely. Most importantly, they guaranteed that no alien force would ever threaten human. Communities again. In return, humans agreed to peaceful cooperation and promised not to expand aggressively into alien space. They would trade fairly and share their own knowledge and culture. As the agreements were signed, Ambassador Zixthara made her final report to the Galactic Council. Her words would be studied by alien strategists for generations to come. We have encountered a species that chooses peace from a position of absolute strength. Every human settlement is a potential fortress. Every human civilian is a potential warrior. Their entire civilization is organized around the principle of survival through preparedness. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans are not aggressive by nature, but they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They have learned to cooperate so effectively that they can turn any group of individuals into a coordinated fighting force in minutes. They are apex predators who have evolved beyond the need to hunt. Our recommendation is immediate acceptance of human territorial sovereignty and establishment of formal diplomatic relations based on mutual respect. Any attempt to conquer or control humans would result in a war against their entire species. And that is a war no one can win. The message spread throughout the galaxy within days. Other alien species who had been watching the human situation carefully immediately sent their own diplomatic missions to Earth. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges were established. Scientific cooperation began. Humans continued their daily lives, mostly unaware that they had just changed galactic politics forever. They went to work, raised their children, created art, and explored space. They remained peaceful and friendly to their alien neighbors.